This episode of Spectre Sound Studios is brought to you by Lewitt Microphones. Hey everybody, how's it going? Now, I'm going to do something I haven't done in a couple of years, and that's shoot out a very expensive set of drums versus a set of cheap ones. Because one thing I keep hearing from you guys over and over and over again is the reason you don't record live drums is due to the expense. And believe me, I understand getting a great drum set and then the mic pre's, the mics, and everything else that goes along with recording real drums can get to be real expensive real quick. And I learned this the hard way back in the day before I got my own studio kit, because drummers would bring in an awful lot of drums that weren't, shall we say, studio condition. You know, bad heads, bad cymbals, just bad everything. And then, you know, sample technology wasn't what it was to these days, so you could only compromise so much. So I broke down and bought myself a really amazing set of drums. I got myself some DW Collector's Maple way back in 2001, and here we are 20 years later. This kit has been absolutely incredible. It's wound up on an awful lot of clients' records, and it's definitely stood the test of time because it sounds absolutely amazing. Now, the cost of this kit in its full configuration, which is 2 kick drums and 4 toms, is somewhere in the rough area of about $6,000 US. Now, if you're running a project studio where you got bands coming in, you know, an expense like this might make sense. But if you're in a local band that's hopefully going to get to play the bars again sometime this year for the other bands and their girlfriends, dropping that kind of money on just drum shells alone is probably not going to be worth it in the long run. The question is, can you bring something into the studio that's going to sound great but isn't going to break the bank? Well, one of my absolute favorite kits to record back in the day is one of these. This is a set of Tama Rockstars. And I found a 5-piece kit on the local market up in London, Ontario last fall for the whopping price of 240 American dollars. And that's the thing, I absolutely love dirt cheap hidden gem gear. And believe me, this is one of those pieces of gear that if you can find one on the used market, you might want to think about taking a look at. And this kit here I got looks to be about the same age as my DWs, maybe a little bit older, and it is definitely in great shape. So for this shootout, Cam Fleury came down to play the kit for us, and we reached out to our friends at Aquarian to see if we could get the same heads for the Rockstar set that we already have on the DWs. They were totally cool with the idea, so we wound up going with the high velocity on the snare, the response 2 on the toms, and the force 1 on the kick. Now to mic the kit, we wound up going with the Lewitt Beat Pro 7 kit plus a couple of extras. On the snare, we've got the 440 DM. On the toms, we've got the 340 TT. Overheads are the LCT 340, and on the kick, we've got the 640 Rex, which is a dual element kick drum mic. It has both a dynamic and a condenser, so you can blend the tones. It's really awesome. On the bottom snare, we went with the 140 Air, and on the room mics, we're using the 240 Pro. Has to be one of my absolute favorite low price condenser mics. You can get them for 150 bucks. For preamps, we went with the Neve 1073 OPX, which is 8 channels, and then for the last couple channels, we went with some API 512Cs, all going into my RME Fireface UFX. Cymbals are by Sabian. They're the exact same ones we used in the shootout 3 years ago. So, can a $240 drum set really stand up against a $6,000 monster? Let's run the test. I gotta say, that was a very, very interesting test. Now, those were just the raw drums with the mics only. And I gotta admit, it's been an interesting year for me because I've learned a lot of things about some of my favorite records that I didn't think had drum samples on them that turns out that they did. I had a very interesting conversation with Paul Lonnie, the man who mixed one of my absolute favorite records ever, which was Megadeth's Peace Sells But Who's Buying. Turns out it had some very rudimentary samples worked in over the main drums. And, you know, here's the thing. I've been very anti-samples over the years, but I've always been under the opinion when new evidence presents itself, if you don't change your opinion, that just makes you a fanatic. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to shoot the two kits out against each other one more time, this time with a 50% sample blend, just to see the differences. I gotta say, with this particular set of samples, both those kits retain their individuality. They just seem to be augmented a little bit more and a little bit more solid sounding. I'm very impressed with how that goes, and this is coming from the guy who absolutely hates drum samples. So we're gonna have some more information on that on the show in a few weeks. Gonna be interesting to see where that goes. Overall, I gotta say, I'm more than just a little bit impressed with the Tama Rockstars and just how well they held up against a kit that cost 25 times the amount. The thing I'm impressed with the most here is the snare that this came with. This thing just sounds like an absolute beast. It's nothing super expensive about it, but wow, the thickness we got off this was just unreal. Now, if a client were to bring a set of Rockstars into the studio, I mean, like, I've already got a set of DWs in here, no big deal. But I mean, if I didn't have that kit, I could probably do something really good with a set of Rockstars, as long as we took steps to make sure that the heads were in good condition and the kit was in studio level functionality. I really wouldn't have a problem with that. The fact that this kit is over 20 years old and the hardware is in great shape lets me know that Tama built some really high quality stuff back in the day. And the fact that you can get them so cheap is kind of a really awesome thing. So if you're looking to get yourself a set of awesome drums, instead of buying new, maybe you should look for a set of Tama Rockstars, because if you can find a set in good shape, these things are going to sound great. Now, I did a shootout about 3 years ago with the DWs versus a set of D Mavericks from China, and there were some pretty significant differences, especially when it came to the snare sound and the kick sound. With the Rockstars, I find that difference narrows quite a bit. There's still some pretty noticeable differences, but in overall terms of quality, I think I'm really liking the sound of the Rockstars. Ultimately, though, my opinion doesn't matter here. It's yours that counts the most, and I want to hear from you. You tell me if you think that the DW sound is worth 25 times that of the Rockstars. I want to hear from you. Oh yes, and of course, for all you guys who want to hear the drums without any effects or mixing or anything like that, I've got the tracks available for download as well. Follow the link in the description below. You can get your hands on all of that. Before we go, I just want to give a great big shout out to this episode's sponsor, Lewitt Microphones, and I'd also like to thank Aquarian Drumheads for making this video possible as well. Both companies are run by absolutely amazing people, and I'm more than happy to partner up with them. Thanks so much for watching. You guys want to see more shootouts like this? Let me know, and of course, let me know what you thought of the Rockstars versus the DWs. So until next time, get out there and make the best records you possibly can with whatever you can get your hands on.